Hello everybody! I'm here today, finally, with my December wrap-up. It's like January 19th or 18th. What is today? It is the 18th, and I'm finally filming my December wrap-up. 2020 is over. 2021 so far, not looking that promising, but it's fine. It's fine. We're gonna read tons of good books, so it doesn't matter if the year is a dumpster fire because the books will still be good. In December, I read 10 books. I read 7 books and 3 novellas. I was trying to hit that Goodreads goal a little bit, you know. There are like 3 or 4 of them that'll probably be on my favorite books of 2020 list if I ever actually make that video. I'm still really struggling to figure out exactly what that list should be. I think I'm just gonna have to go with my gut. The first book that I finished in December was Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a pre-Columbian inspired fantasy novel. It's a first in a series. Rebecca Roanhorse also has written The Sixth World. She's written 2 books anyway so far in the Sixth World Trail of Lightning series, which I really enjoy. I gave it 4 stars. We have 4 points of view, but mainly we have like 3 main ones and then one that's like kind of there. I'm not even really going to talk about that one, but we have Shiala, Serapio, and Narumpa. We start with Shiala. She is a member of this group of people called the Teak that are kind of this disgraced people that are very like untrusted by other members of the society, and she basically has this ability to through her voice, through her song, like control the seas. And we start off in this novel with her. We come to her and she's in prison or in jail, and somebody like buys her way out of jail because they want her to captain this ship and to take a special, like, very important cargo to the city of, what's it called, Tova, the holy city of Tova, before the solstice. Takes on this job in order to get out of jail, and when she gets to the ship and, like, starts this journey, she finds out that this important cargo that she's taking to the city of Tova is actually a man named Serapio. He's blind. He's like been horribly mutilated by his mother. There's like it goes a lot into his backstory in this novel, and yeah, so he's basically his mother's wanted to set him up to ascend to like great power during the solstice. He's kind of like an anti-hero type character. But it's really interesting because, you know, he has kind of this power where, yes, he's blind, like his eyes were literally carved out of his head when he was younger, but he uses crows to like, the crows are like his eyes, and he has like a special connection with it. It was really cool. The third character is Narumpa, who's the sun priest, and we follow her a little bit more because, you know, basically, the reason Serapio is he's going to like try to overthrow the Sun Priest and like take over it and whatever. I don't want to get too much into it. I don't want to spoil too much, but we really mostly follow Shiala and Serapio and their voyage. But you know, like the first couple chapters of this where we first met Shiala, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I'm gonna love this. You know how like sometimes in books that first few chapters like are a little misleading because they kind of they start off in they kind of set a different tone than the rest of the novel takes, but it was still really good. I love Shiala, she's so badass. The one thing I found was a bit jarring was the ending. Like, we built up the entire novel to this like great like battle, basically. Not battle, but this great like, there's gonna be some kind of fight, there's gonna be something going on the solstice, and then it just kind of ends. The book just kind of ends, like things happen, but it wasn't that crazy. And like it's really kind of left us on a cliffhanger for sure. So I'm excited for the next book. I definitely want to read it. Like, it was a really solid fantasy, and like it's been so hyped, and I'm so happy because Rebecca Roanhorse is an incredible writer. So yeah, Black Sun, that was the first book. I started off December really good. It was really good. Oh my gosh. Next, I read Homegoing by Yeah Jessie. Finally finished this book. I started listening to the audiobook for this book in like June, and then my loan for the audiobook for my library ran out, and I couldn't get it again until December. And I wanted to keep listening to it on audio because historical fiction is not my thing, really, and I was really jiving with the audio, so I was like, I'll just wait for the audio. And it was incredible, and I'm so glad, like, once I got the audio, I started it again from the beginning because it had been 6 months, and like really reading that first half for a second time really clarified things in my mind, and like I was so glad that I did that, because sometimes as a reader you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I just read the first half of this 6 months ago, I'll just jump in where it left off. Like, no, I'm so glad that I started it over again. It made so much more sense in my mind. This is kind of his historical literary fiction novel about these two sisters, Essie and Effia. So they don't know each other. They're in Ghana in the 18th century, and we kind of just follow their points of view. We start off, one of them gets married to this rich, what is he? English man. It doesn't really say anything else. So this like rich white guy, whatever, who is working in the slave trade, like selling slaves. And then the other sister is sold into slavery. And so we start with their points of view, and we follow their families through the generations, like 7 or 8 generations. And there's like a little, somewhere in the front of this book, which I was so thankful for this, it would have been just so kind of confusing without it. There's a little family tree. So yeah, we have Essie and Effia, and 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 generations, 6 generations after them. And so each chapter of the book is a different point of view. So we start with Effia, and then we have Essie, and then we have one of Effie's children, and then one of Essie's children, her child's point of view. And it goes back and forth like that. And so you're following these parallels of the different lives that each side of this family has had. And so one side of the family is in America, and the other side is still in Ghana. And it was just, like, I don't really jive super well with historical fiction. It's not my favorite. And, like, a lot of times I feel like I'm too dumb for books like this. You know, like, you just kind of get down on yourself. You're like, those books are so, like, up on a pedestal of being so incredible, so renowned. I'm like, am I just not going to appreciate it enough? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of are worried that you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna get it. I got it. I loved it so much. I see the hype. I just, like, I never thought that I would feel this way about a book like this. Like, I loved it so much. Full 5 stars, by the way. I'm really interested to pick up her new novel, Transcendent Kingdom, because that came out in 2020, and I've heard a lot of great things about it. But this was like, it was just so amazing. And I think just reading that, like starting it over again for a second time and like being in the mindset for it, totally made it a different experience than the first time I started reading it and read half of it. I don't feel like I was really getting it. And I just, oh my gosh, I loved it so much. I'm gonna stop like raving about it, but it was just, oh, it was so good. The first novella that I read was The Test by Sylvain Neuvel. I don't even know how to explain this book. It's basically about a man who's taking the British citizenship test, and I actually thought that's what it was about. I'm like, this is about a guy taking the British citizenship test, and it's obviously like marketed as a thriller, so like I'm like, something sinister must happen, but there's really like no description basically. And this was not what I expected at all. I gave it 3.75 stars. Really solid read, but it was like, you know, it was nothing that like changed my life. But I will say, like, if you want like a really kind of twisty, like mind-bending little, very dark thriller, definitely pick it up. I don't know what to say that's not a spoiler, but I will say it's not a citizenship test like we know. And then the other novella, well, I read 2 by this author. The other one is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Niveau. This one follows a cleric named, oh my gosh, what is their name? Chi? I think it's Chi. Is it though? Yes. And they are collecting stories, documenting stories. They visit this lady named Rabbit, this handmaiden, and she was once handmaiden for this empress during a time when the empress is like forced into this marriage of convenience and then exiled. And it says on the back, like, gets way more than they bargained for or whatever. So it's just this really fun story of their, like, time together, Rabbit and the Empress, and this journey. And it kind of jumps a little bit back and forth. Like, we get the storytelling, and then we get a little bit of Chi and Rabbit's, like, interaction and kind of back and forth. And it's just such a, like, I don't know what it is, but like the writing is so, I don't know how to explain it, but you know when there's that kind of writing where it just paints such a vivid picture in your mind of the scenery, of the setting, like it's just such beautiful imagery. And like I don't feel like it really like over explains. It's not like super flowering writing. It's not like all description, but it just like you get a really clear picture in your mind of this setting, of this like world, and it's so beautiful. And for like such short little books, they're just really, it feels like it is like a full story in these really little books. And I gave this 4 stars. Nevo's writing is so good, and I'm so excited because she's publishing like an Asian Great Gatsby retelling in 2021 called The Chosen and the Beautiful, which follows like Jordan Baker. And I have read The Great Gatsby so long ago, I don't remember much about it, but like she's just such a good writer. I'm super excited for it. So I did read this one, and then I also read, I'm not sure which side I'm going to put the picture up. I read When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, also by Nevo. This is the second book in this like companion novel series. In this one we're following Chi again and a companion, I don't remember their name, and they get chased by these tigers, and so they all end up like cornered in this barn, and they're there for the night. And so while Chi and their companion are kind of waiting to be rescued, they try to distract the tigers by telling them this tale of a tiger who fell in love with a woman and tried to woo her. But while they're telling this story to the tigers are like kind of correcting them and telling them a different version, because they're like, their versions really differ. And it was just really fun. And it was like them just trying to like, you know, not get eaten by these tigers. And this story, like, they're really, this series seems to be like, they're books about stories, and it's really nice and really fun. And I don't know if I said I gave this one 4 stars as well. And Chi, kind of the main character we're following, is also non-binary. And I believe the series is called The Singing Hills Cycle. Highly recommend. Next I read The Space Between Worlds by Mike K. Johnson. Oh my goodness, new favorite, loved it. This is a sci-fi, it's kind of like a light sci-fi because it doesn't have like a ton of like spaceships and stuff, but we do have like dimension hopping and like multiple universes. We follow our main character Kara, who is she comes from a poor part of this city, like outside the city. I don't remember what the city is called. Basically in this world, they figured out how to travel to these other dimensions, but you can only travel to these other worlds if you have already died in that world. Like if the version of you was in that world is gone. Otherwise you kind of get spit out, rejected, and usually like you're a crumpled heap or you're dead, like totally destroyed. So our main character Kara is really an asset to the city and to this whole like world hopping endeavor, because she's died, the versions of her have died in 372 of these other worlds. So she's kind of an asset. She can travel to the most worlds of anybody. So even though she's like a poor, darker skinned person from the slums who's like looked down upon by everyone, she is really an asset because of her ability to die in a lot of worlds seemingly. So it really talks a lot about that in these books, like people who were like discarded by society and like looked down upon so much for being poor or for being from outside this walled city and whatever. They actually in turn become like the biggest assets because of the fact that they're growing up poor and in poverty in so many worlds that they can travel to them. Early on in this novel, Kara finds out that she gets another world. I think they call it like an assignment or whatever, because she's died on another world. So when she travels to that world, I don't know how much to say that's not a spoiler. When she travels to that world, she finds out it's not what she thought. What she thought happened to that other version of her is not at all the truth, and things go crazy from there. And it was just so good. It was so good. I loved it. It's like a lighter sci-fi, like, you know, it doesn't have like spaceships and aliens and things like that, but it's just so fun. And I wish, like, Part of me wishes it was a series. I know that it's better off left to standalone, but like, I want to be in this world. I want to see these characters again. 5 stars, did I say that? I loved it so much, and I highly recommend it. It was awesome. And it also has kind of female. There's not really a romance in this, but Kara, I would guess Kara's bisexual. I don't know if it's really on page. I don't think so. But she basically there's like talk about this relationship with this abusive man that she had before. And then she's also kind of harboring feelings for Dell. So she harbors great feelings for Dell, who is her, like the person who like controls her jumping when they jump from, I forget what everything is called, but the person, Dell is like the person who kind of controls her jumps and like, make sure that everything's good with her and everything. And Kara's like in love with her and all that. But there's not really a romance, but there's definitely like, the feelings are there. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I loved it so much. All right, the next one that I read. This book is super hyped right now. And I was super excited for it. And like going into this one, I'm like, this might be my new favorite book ever. This follows our main character, Linus Baker. He's like a 40-year-old gay man who lives alone, and his like in his entire world is his job, and he is a caseworker for magical children. So like he travels around to different orphanages and makes sure that everything's running up to snuff, and like the children are not like posing a danger to society and whatever, because this is a world where there are these magical beings, magical children, all different like totally random things. Like there's no rhyme or reason to, you know, these different children, who they are, what they can do. Like it's just like totally random. There's like gnomes, and then there's the Antichrist. Like, it's just, anyway. So during the early part of this book, Linus gets this new case where he has to go and spend a month on this island where there's this special home which has like 6 very dangerous, their class is like very dangerous children. So Linus goes there reluctantly, where he meets the caretaker and the headmaster of this orphanage called Arthur Parnassus. And Linus basically, like, he spends this month on this island with these children. When he first gets there, he's super terrified of them. They're like very funny little children. I will say I listened to the audiobook for this, and I feel like that maybe deducted from the enjoyment a little bit, because the narrator just makes these crazy weird voices for the children that like they just sound like really bad like cartoon dog voices. If you ever watched like cartoons from like the early 2000s with like if they had talking pets or like whatever, like just really weird. Like, I don't know, I didn't like that part. I feel like I may have enjoyed it more if I had read it physically. Linus goes there, he learns a lot about life and what you're actually living for. And from these children and from Arthur, and it's a beautiful story, and there might be a little bit of a romance, just a little tiny smidge at the end. It's one of those books that's like, is this marketed as adult? Yes, $36, that's definitely adult. That's how I can quickly check. If the book is over $30 hardcover, it's probably an adult book. It's another one of those books that feels younger than it's actually the age range it's marketed for. It definitely totally feels like a middle grade, except for the fact that we're following like a 40-year-old character. Like it's so wholesome and so like lovable and fun, and just really readable and enjoyable. Like, and it just has a very middle grade vibe, like even the cover, but it is like adult, you know? It's interesting. I'm not totally sure what I rated this book. I think I originally gave it 4 stars, then I bumped it up to 5 stars, and I'm not sure. Like maybe it should be a 4.5, but I feel like the reason that I want to deduct a little bit is because of the audiobooks. That feels unfair. I really enjoyed this and I would highly recommend it, especially because like everybody friggin' loves it. I will say maybe, if you have the ability, maybe read it physically. Like I said, I haven't read it physically, so I'm not sure, but I think it might be better than the audiobook, because the audiobook was just a little bit outrageous. So last 2 books of the year were both nonfiction, and both really, really good. So the first one is The Skin We're In by Desmond Cole. I gave this book 5 stars. This is Desmond Cole's first novel, but he's been a Canadian journalist for a long time. Lives in Toronto, and this book kind of chronicles 1 year of like him writing about racial issues in Canada and kind of trying to fight racism in his own way. It starts off at the beginning of 2017, and obviously in 2016 that was a huge year in North America, especially in the US, for the fight against racism and Black Lives Matter, because so much shit was happening. And so he starts off, and this book kind of chronicles the year of 2017 and these different pieces that he was writing about racism and the pushback that he was getting from the industry and from, you know, his the companies he was writing for, being like, you're writing about racial issues too much, like, you know. And like it talks a lot about how like Canada likes to, you know, stand up on this pedestal, like looking down at the US, like how Canada is so like free of racism and it's so great, it's so inclusive, when really there's a lot of racism and serious like racial discrimination issues in Canada as well. He also dives into like a lot of like individual stories of different people, and because he's a journalist, like he's obviously an incredible writer, and it was really freaking good. It was so good, like so worth your time. I would highly suggest reading it. Not only does he highlight stories of racial injustice in Canada, but through him trying to tell those stories, he's also facing other racial injustice because people are like, hey, let's talk about something else. Stop talking about racial issues. Like, yeah, like just so frustrating. And he did it so well. Like he was able to document this time in Canada and what was going on in the US, like the year of 2017, so well, and also talk about these individual stories, and also talk a bit about his own life and what he was going through and what he was doing. Just so good. So good. Read it. The final book that I read in 2020, I was like, you know, let's add a little bit of spice. Missing from the Village by Justin Ling, subtitled The Story of Serial Killer Bruce McArthur, The Search for Justice, and the System That Failed Toronto's Queer Community. I gave this book 4 stars. It was good. I will say, I believe, I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure Justin Ling is the one who basically made the podcast CBC, what is it called? CBC, the podcast CBC's Uncover has a whole season that's called, I think, Missing from the Village, and it has like 8 episodes or something that totally chronicles the story and was basically the exact same story and like documentation style as this. So I feel like Justin Ling was the one who made that as well, and then he just made a book. Let me check. Is it him? The season of the podcast is just called The Village, not Missing from the Village.
Hi, I'm Jamie Poisson, host of Front
Yeah,
the
okay.
CBC's Daily.
Okay, whoa. Investigative journalist Justin Ling follows the case as friends search for loved ones and police provide few answers. Okay, so here's the thing. I didn't know that when I bought this book and spent $33. Not that I'm mad at all. I think actually it was probably on sale at Indigo because it was a new release when I bought it. Anyway, this is pretty much the exact same story, or the exact same, yeah, it's the exact same thing as the podcast. So I would say, like, if you like podcasts, or if you plan to listen to this on audio anyway, maybe just listen to the podcast, at least first. Like, if you want to maybe get a little bit more, like, the book might have had a little bit more. I listened to the podcast like a year and a half ago, I think. So, so basically this talks about the men that were going missing from Toronto's gay village, leading up to the arrest of Bruce McArthur. Like that, I don't even know, decade of time, these men were going missing. And so Justin Ling, who is author of this book, who also hosts that podcast, he went there, like, he's part of that community, so, like, he does have kind of this, like, own voices perspective on the experiences that people were having during this time in the gay community in Toronto with their friends and people they know totally just disappearing off the face of the earth, people suspecting that there's a serial killer, and Toronto police just being like, no, shh, we don't say that word. And, like, probably so many deaths could have been prevented if the police hadn't, like, snoozed or whatever. If they'd taken the community more seriously, if they worked more with them as a partner instead of kind of, you know, in parallel and, like, obviously diving back into history against the gay community and totally were horrible to the gay community. And the podcast really dives into that a lot more, like, and, you know, the history of, like, the raids in the community and, like, how horrible, you know, the police brutality against gay people in Toronto. And So like that's what, and the book also talks about it. I definitely recommend the podcast and also the book if you would prefer to read it in book form, or like you listen to the podcast and you want a little bit more, but like they were basically exactly the same. Yeah, but Justin Ling does an incredible job. Like, I'm not trying to shit on it at all by saying like they're the same thing. Either way, both stories, like it's all one story really, and it's impeccable. I love investigative journalism. Like I think those are my favorite podcasts, and I think that he did an incredible job. The podcast and also the book not only like perfectly melds together like the present day kind of that like 2010s, what was going on in the village, and like looking for these men that were going missing, and like also kind of talking about, in parallel, Bruce McArthur's life and what he was doing at that time. And then also diving back in history and talking about the history of Toronto's gay village, and also the history of their relationship with the Toronto police. And it was just like, it was all really fantastic. So whichever way you choose to consume this story, I would definitely say please do it. If it's your thing, obviously. It doesn't get super brutal into like, it's not like super graphic. There's not like super, grotesque depictions of like murders or anything like that. Like, yes, we do talk about, because obviously if you've heard about the story, basically he was, killing these men and chopping them up and hiding them in the planters of his clients because he was a landscaper. Either way, Justin Ling investigates and kind of reports on this story in an incredible way. Whichever media you choose to consume it through, I would definitely suggest that you do. Like, he did an incredible job. That's all I'm gonna say. Those were the 10 books and novellas that I consumed in December. It was such a good reading month. Like, already, like, I raved so hard about Homegoing. I raved about The Space Between Worlds. Raved about The Skin We're In. Like, it was just a solid reading month. But yeah, I'm still gonna try and figure out my favorite books of the year list. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna figure it out, and hopefully we'll get that up before the end of January. So anyway, thank you guys for watching and hanging out with me, because I feel like this is gonna be a long video when I go to edit it. But like, yeah, like I said, thank you for watching. Please talk to me in the comments about any of these books, if you've read them, if you loved them, if you had different opinions than me, if you just want to read them. Let's just talk about books. Have a good day wherever you are, evening, night, morning, whatever. And I'll be back at some point with another video. Bye-bye.